All right, let's jump into this deep dive on St. Patrick's Day. I'm sure we've all got that image in our heads, right? March 17th, lots of green, maybe a bit too much beer. But we're going to dig a little deeper this time. We've got this really interesting article called St. Patrick's Day 2025. When is it? Origin, traditions, and celebrations. And we're also going to be pulling some stuff from timeanddate.com about how it's celebrated here in the US. It's celebrated all over the world, but it's really interesting to see how different countries have their own take on it. So yeah, let's see if we can uncover some stuff about this global phenomenon that maybe we didn't know before.
You know, it's amazing how this day honoring just one saint turned into a worldwide party.
Oh,
Really makes you think about how much power cultural heritage can have.
yeah, for sure. I mean, we all think of parades and those shamrocks, but
Yeah.
have you ever thought about where it all started? Like, who was this St. Patrick guy anyway?
Well, it turns out there's a lot of mystery surrounding him. The sources we have suggest he might not even have been Irish. He was probably born in Roman Britain. Can you believe that?
Wow, seriously?
Yeah, and get this. He was actually taken to Ireland as a slave
No way.
and then later escaped, but eventually ended up going back to spread Christianity.
Huh.
It really flips the script on what we think we know.
That's crazy. I mean, to think that his death on March 17th is what kicked off this whole huge celebration.
Yeah, it's like a historical event becoming something so much bigger, you know, and the meaning keeps changing over time.
It's interesting to think about how the actual celebrations have changed, too. Do people always wear green and down all those pints of Guinness?
Not exactly. Back in the day, it was a lot more about religious observance,
Yeah.
you know, honoring the work St. Patrick did and all that. But as time went on, it morphed into something else. It became a celebration of Irish culture as a whole and their heritage.
That makes sense. So it wasn't just about religion anymore.
Exactly. It was about music and dancing and storytelling, all that stuff that makes up Irish identity.
So the holiday itself went through a kind of a self-discovery, you could say. So when did it become the, like, more global party we see today?
Well, that's where the Irish diaspora comes in, right? You had millions of people leaving Ireland and bringing their traditions with them all over the world. And the U.S. especially, you know, really shaped how it's celebrated now.
I can see that. The U.S. loves a good party. But did those huge parades start in the U.S.? Because everyone thinks of Dublin when you say St. Patrick's Day, right?
Oh, for sure. Dublin's parade is iconic. It brings in over 1 million people. But you know what? New York City's parade is even bigger.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. You get something like 2 million spectators. Talk about Irish-American pride.
Wow. It's really cool how a holiday can bring people together like that, even across different countries. And speaking of the U.S., the stuff we've been looking at mentions some pretty interesting things about how it's different over there. Like, it's not even a federal holiday, is it?
Nope, not at all. But it's still celebrated all over the country, especially in places where there are a lot of Irish Americans, like Savannah, Chicago, and of course, Boston. Every city puts its own spin on it, too.
I've heard about Chicago dyeing their river green for it. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of their favorite things to do. It turns the whole river this bright green. It's wild.
That's so cool.
It's a great example of how celebrations adapt. They
Yeah.
take on these local quirks.
It's amazing how something that started as a religious thing in Ireland turned into this global party. It really makes you think about how much of the original meaning is still there, you know?
That's a good question. In the U.S., it seems like it's a mix of the religious stuff and the cultural celebration.
Yeah.
There's definitely respect for St. Patrick and what he did, but there's also a really strong focus on celebrating what it means to be Irish, you know.
So it's not just about the green beer and leprechauns.
Well, those are fun too. They add a little bit of myth and fun to everything. But yeah, there's definitely more to it. There's something deeper about St. Patrick's Day, something that connects with people on a cultural and even a spiritual level.
I get that. Okay, we've covered a lot, from those humble beginnings to this worldwide party. It's clear there's way more to St. Patrick's Day than meets the eye. But let's dive a little deeper into some of the symbols behind it all, like those shamrocks everybody wears. Do they have a deeper meaning, or are they just a cute Irish thing?
Oh, they definitely have a deeper meaning. The shamrock, with its 3 leaves, has been associated with the Holy Trinity in Christianity for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it's a really powerful symbol that connects religious beliefs with cultural identity.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So by wearing a shamrock, you're kind of expressing your faith and your heritage at the same time. It's like a secret code. Well, what about those snakes St. Patrick was supposed to have gotten rid of in Ireland? Were there actually snakes there, or is there more to that story?
Ah, the legend of St. Patrick driving out all the snakes.
Ah,
It's a great story. But most historians think that Ireland never actually had any snakes.
So is more of a symbolic thing.
Exactly. A lot of people think the snakes represent the pagan beliefs that were around in Ireland before Christianity got there.
I see.
So when St. Patrick got rid of the snakes, it was like a symbol of Christianity winning over paganism.
That adds a whole other layer to it. It's like a religious battle, but told through symbols. It makes you wonder what those early Irish people would think of how it's celebrated today.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
How they feel about all the parades and the partying compared to how serious their faith was.
Yeah, good point. It is amazing how much those celebrations have changed over time. It went from this religious thing to a full-blown global party with its own traditions and symbols. But what about the leprechauns and the pots of gold at the end of the rainbow? Where do they fit in?
Well, they weren't part of the original religious stuff, that's for sure.
Hmm.
Leprechauns come from Irish folklore. They're these mischievous little creatures that are known for tricking people, and they're always trying to hide their pots of gold at the end of the rainbow.
So they're more on the mythical side of things, huh?
Exactly. They bring a bit of magic and fun to the celebration. They remind us that St. Patrick's Day isn't just about Irish heritage. It's also about having a good time.
Right, it's all about balance. It shows that even really old traditions can change and adapt over time, but they still keep their main essence. But before we move on, I have a question. Have there been any times when St. Patrick's Day itself has been moved?
You know, there have been a few times, but it's pretty rare. Like if St. Patrick's Day falls on a big religious day, like Palm Sunday, the Catholic Church might change the date so they don't clash.
So it's all about respecting the religious calendar and the meaning of the day.
Exactly. It's a balancing act between those cultural celebrations and religious traditions.
It's amazing how much depth there is to this holiday. We've learned about the history, the symbolism, the traditions, and it's clear that St. Patrick's Day is way more than just green beer and parades. But we want to hear from you, our listeners. What's standing out to you so far about St. Patrick's Day? Is it the fact that it's celebrated all over the world, or maybe the interesting life of St. Patrick? Or how about that mix of religious and cultural stuff? We'd love to hear your thoughts as we keep going with this deep dive.
It really is remarkable how one day can mean so much to so many people all over the world. It shows you just how strong tradition and cultural identity can be.
It really makes you think about what those first celebrations in Ireland must have been like. I picture it being, solemn religious services, maybe a small feast with family. It's a far cry from the massive parades and parties we see today.
It's a testament to how dynamic culture is. Traditions change, they adapt to new environments and influences. And as Irish culture spread around the globe, so did their way of celebrating St. Patrick.
Our sources mention something called Evacuation Day in the United States. It's on March 17th, too. Is there any connection there?
That is an interesting coincidence. Evacuation Day commemorates when the British left Boston back in 1776 during the Revolutionary War. It's a pretty big deal in American history, especially in Massachusetts, where it's a public holiday.
So you've got these two historical events, one Irish, one American, happening on the same day. It makes you wonder if that had any impact on how St. Patrick's Day evolved in the U.S.
It's definitely possible. Imagine those early Irish immigrants in Boston celebrating their patron saint on the same day as this pivotal moment in their new country's history. It's a really cool intersection of cultures and history.
I'm starting to see St. Patrick's Day in a whole new light now. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You find more and more depth and complexity with each layer. We talked about the shamrock and its connection to the Holy Trinity and the snakes symbolizing paganism. But I'm still curious about those leprechauns and their pots of gold. They seem kind of out of place in a celebration that started out with such strong religious roots.
Well, they definitely came along later. Leprechauns, with their mischief and hidden treasure, are straight out of Irish folklore. They bring a touch of whimsy and magic to the celebrations, reminding us of the rich storytelling tradition in Irish culture.
It's almost like the holiday embraces both the serious and the playful sides of Irish heritage. You have the religious reverence for St. Patrick, the cultural pride in Irish music and dance, and then there's this layer of folklore and mythology woven in. It's a fascinating blend.
Exactly. It speaks to the multifaceted nature of cultural identity. It's not just about following strict traditions or beliefs. It's about embracing the stories, the myths, the legends that give a culture its unique personality.
It's interesting how certain symbols become so strongly tied to a specific culture or celebration. We see it with the shamrock for St. Patrick's Day, the eagle for America, the maple leaf for Canada. It's as if these symbols become shorthand for a whole set of values and beliefs.
It's a form of visual language. Symbols are powerful tools for communication. conveying complex ideas and emotions in a simple, recognizable way. And in the case of St. Patrick's Day, the shamrock, the snakes, the leprechauns all contribute to a rich tapestry of meaning that goes beyond words.
It reminds you that sometimes the most powerful stories aren't told with words. They're told through symbols and images. They let us tap into a deeper level of understanding, connecting us to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. They invite us to look past the surface and explore the hidden meanings underneath. And when we do that, we gain a richer appreciation for the culture and its legacy.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into St. Patrick's Day, what's the takeaway for our listeners? What have we learned about this holiday that goes beyond the green beer and parades?
We've uncovered how St. Patrick's Day has evolved, from its humble religious beginnings to its current status as a global celebration of Irish culture and heritage. We explored the symbolism behind its iconic imagery, and we saw how one day can hold multiple layers of meaning, reflecting the complexities of cultural identity.
We also saw how the celebration has adapted and transformed as it's spread across borders, blending with other cultures and taking on new dimensions. It's proof of the resilience of tradition and the lasting power of human connection.
And ultimately, I think the takeaway is that St. Patrick's Day, at its core, is about belonging. It's about connecting with your heritage, whether it's your own or someone else's. It's about finding a sense of community and shared identity in a world that often feels divided.
It reminds us that even though we're different, we share a common human desire for connection, for belonging, for something that makes us feel like we're part of something bigger. And maybe, just maybe, that's the true magic of St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, it's really powerful how a holiday can make you feel like you belong. It makes you think maybe that's why St. Patrick's Day is so popular even with people who don't have any Irish ancestry.
That's interesting. It could be that we all have this need to connect with something bigger than ourselves, right? Whether it's a cultural heritage, a tradition we share with others, or just a feeling of community.
I think you're right. We've all seen those pictures and videos of St. Patrick's Day celebrations all over the world, from those huge parades in Dublin and New York City to the smaller get-togethers in little towns. It seems like everybody wants to be a part of it, like it's something that goes beyond borders and cultures. There's something about celebrating together that brings people together. It's like for one day, everyone forgets their differences and just focuses on having fun. The music, the food, the laughter, it all adds up to this shared joy. It reminds us that even though the world can be a complicated place, there are still these moments where we can all connect and just be human.
You know, we usually talk about globalization in terms of economics and technology, but St. Patrick's Day is a great example of cultural globalization, how traditions and ideas can spread across the world and change as they go.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is that even though it's celebrated all over the world, St. Patrick's Day still has this strong connection to its Irish roots. The symbols, the music, the stories, they all point back to that unique culture and heritage that people still find fascinating.
It's like a huge cultural exchange. People are trying out Irish culture, whether it's wearing green, listening to traditional music, or having some Irish stew. It's a way to experience a different culture, to learn something new, and to appreciate the diversity of the world.
And in a world where it seems like everyone's always fighting, that kind of cultural exchange is so important. It helps us understand each other better, to be more empathetic, and to remember that we're all human.
Well said. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into St. Patrick's Day, what's the one thing we want our listeners to remember? What's the real legacy of this holiday beyond the parades and the green beer?
I think it's a reminder that culture is alive, it's constantly changing, it adapts to new environments and influences, but at the same time, it's always connected to its past, to the stories, traditions, and values that made it what it is.
St. Patrick's Day shows us how powerful culture can be. It goes beyond borders, it connects different generations, and it brings people together to celebrate their shared heritage. And maybe, just maybe, it reminds us that even when the world feels divided, there are still those moments where we can come together and feel a sense of unity and belonging.
It's something to think about as we get closer to the next St. Patrick's Day.
Exactly. Until then, keep exploring, keep discovering, and keep celebrating all the amazing cultures that make our world so interesting and diverse.